Welcome back to VSOW, not a podcast, but a YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
Today we're going deep into the world of the Guardian Angels,
Yeah.
a group that sparked as much debate as they have headlines.
Yeah, you could definitely say that.
So, to help us navigate this complicated legacy,
Hmm.
we have an expert
That's me.
to break it all down for us.
Happy to be here.
So let's start with the basics.
Okay.
Um, the Guardian Angels, they emerged in a very specific time and place, New York City in the late 1970s.
That's right. A period often remembered for its high crime rates and a sense of unease, especially on the subways.
And it was in that context that Curtis Sliwa,
Yeah.
this charismatic, kind of controversial figure,
Mm-hmm.
forms the Guardian Angels in 1979.
Right. He and a group of 13 other individuals, they called themselves the Magnificent 13.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah, so they set out to combat crime on the subways.
And they did this by
Well, this is where it gets interesting. They chose to be unarmed.
unarmed.
Yeah, they focused on deterrence, visibility, and intervening nonviolently
So that's a pretty radical departure from,
from traditional law enforcement.
yeah.
At the time, it was a bold move,
Mm-hmm.
and it immediately set them apart from the police.
Yeah, I can see how that would create some tension.
Oh, absolutely, it did. Sometimes even outright conflict.
So it's almost like they were offering an alternative model of security.
Right, one that was rooted in community presence rather than just like forceful authority.
Yeah, and that approach that really resonated with people, right?
It did. From those initial 13 members in New York City,
Mm-hmm.
they expanded to over 130 cities
Wow,
and 13 countries.
that's incredible growth.
Yeah, and it really speaks to,
That desire for safety.
yeah, this universal need for safety, but also to their ability to adapt their model to different local issues.
So what were some of the factors that fueled that global expansion?
Well, their volunteer-driven model allowed them to expand quickly
Mm-hmm.
and cost-effectively.
Right, because they didn't have to
Pay salary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also they got a lot of media attention,
Boy, bad.
both positive and negative, which raised their profile significantly.
The media loves a good story, and the Guardian Angels, with their red berets and bold approach,
Yeah,
they definitely provided that.
for sure. But with that much attention comes scrutiny.
Right. And alongside that rapid growth, the Guardian Angels also faced a growing number of controversies.
Yeah, and criticisms.
This is where things get a little more complicated.
Yeah, we need to sort of understand the context of that rapid expansion.
Mm.
You know, they went from patrolling subways to addressing issues like drug dealing, gang violence, even providing support during crises like the COVID-19 pandemic.
So, pretty wide range of activities.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, how do you maintain a consistent approach and philosophy when you're dealing with so many different situations?
Right. And we can't shy away from those criticisms.
Of course not.
One of the biggest early scandals involved Curtis Sliwa himself.
Unfortunately, yes. In the 1980s, Sliwa admitted to fabricating several incidents,
Yeah, including staged subway rescues.
like fake rescues.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And even a fake kidnapping, all to generate publicity for the group.
That must have been a huge blow to their credibility.
It absolutely was. It raised serious questions about Sliwa's motives
Yeah.
and the organization's ethics. And this wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment either. He continued to be a controversial figure throughout his career.
He definitely has a knack for attracting attention,
Yeah.
whether it's through his media appearances, his outspoken political views, or even his personal life.
That's putting it mildly. But before we delve into Sliwa's colorful life, I think it's important to understand the core of the criticisms leveled against the Guardian Angels themselves.
Okay, so let's dive into that.
Yeah.
What were the main concerns people had about the organization?
Well, one persistent criticism was the tension with law enforcement.
Yeah.
Many police departments viewed the Guardian Angels as vigilantes
Oh, I see.
who were overstepping their bounds.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. Here's this group patrolling the streets, often in areas where police presence was already heavy.
Hmm.
It seems like a recipe for conflict.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just about their relationship with the police.
Right.
There were also allegations of misconduct by some members.
Sadly, yes, accusations of bullying, racial profiling, and even harassment by some Guardian Angels members surfaced over the years.
So we have an organization born out of good intentions, trying to make a difference,
Yeah.
but also facing serious allegations and questions about its effectiveness.
It's a complicated picture.
Very complicated. And that complexity only deepens when you consider the founder, Curtis Sliwa.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's talk about Sliwa.
Okay.
His story is as fascinating as it is controversial.
To understand the Guardian Angels, you have to understand Sliwa.
Mm-hmm.
He's been their driving force, their spokesperson, and in many ways the embodiment of their complexities and contradictions.
I mean, his life story almost reads like a movie script.
Doesn't it?
We're talking about someone who managed a McDonald's, worked for the Daily News, expanded the Angels to Buffalo, and then got kidnapped and shot by the mob.
It's a wild ride for sure, and that's just scratching the surface.
And then he runs for mayor of New York City.
He does, in 2021.
That mayoral campaign was a whole other chapter in the Curtis Sliwa saga.
Let's just say it was eventful.
Eventful's a good word for it. There were mishaps at his polling place. The resurfacing of those past lies about the Guardian Angels.
Yeah.
Accusations that the whole thing was a publicity stunt.
There was also a campaign finance violation complaint for promoting his campaign on his radio show.
Oh.
And he made some very controversial statements on his NY1 segment.
And who could forget the campaign promise to turn Gracie Mansion into an animal sanctuary?
The classic Sliwa.
So Sliwa definitely knows how to make headlines.
He does.
But was he a serious candidate, or was it all about the spectacle?
It's a question worth considering.
Yeah.
Because it sheds light on the broader question of the Guardian Angels' legitimacy and effectiveness.
So let's circle back to that core question.
Okay.
Did they actually make a difference in crime rates?
That's where the evidence gets a bit murky.
Okay.
Studies and investigations have yielded mixed results. Some suggest they had a limited impact on certain types of crime, particularly property crime.
But what about their impact on overall crime rates, particularly in the subway, where it all began?
That's where the evidence is less conclusive. Some studies suggest they had no significant impact on overall crime rates in the NYC subway.
So if their impact on crime is debatable, what about their impact on public perception?
Okay.
Did they succeed in making people feel safer?
That's where they seem to have had a more clear-cut positive impact. People often felt safer when they saw the Guardian Angels patrolling their neighborhoods or riding the subways.
So even if they weren't single-handedly stopping every crime, they provided a sense of security.
Exactly.
A visible reminder that someone was looking out for the community.
And that sense of security, that feeling of empowerment, is something worth considering. It speaks to the complex and often intangible ways in which community safety operates.
It raises the question,
Yeah.
is reducing the fear of crime as important as reducing crime itself?
It's a fascinating question and one that gets to the heart of the debate about the role of community policing and citizen action.
And it also speaks to the enduring legacy of the Guardian Angels.
Yes.
They may not be as prominent as they once were, but they're still active, still working to make a difference in communities around the world.
They continue to adapt to new challenges and find ways to stay relevant in a changing world.
And that brings us to the present day.
Okay.
Where do the Guardian Angels stand today after all these years of triumphs, controversies, and evolving societal landscapes?
They're still out there, patrolling the streets, engaging with communities, and trying to make a difference.
They recently resumed subway patrols in response to a surge in violence on public transportation.
Yeah.
It seems their mission is as relevant as ever.
It does raise the question, what does the future hold for the Guardian Angels?
It's a question we'll have to explore further in our next segment.
You know, it's kind of fascinating to think about how an organization, like born in the gritty subways of 1970s New York, how they've managed to adapt and evolve over the decades.
It's almost like they've become a cultural icon, haven't they?
Yeah.
Those red berets,
Yeah.
instantly recognizable.
Absolutely. But beyond just like the visuals,
Right.
their methods have always been a point of fascination and contention.
You're talking about the unarmed patrol.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That was a radical departure from traditional law enforcement at the time.
Totally.
They had a strict no weapons policy, emphasizing de-escalation and nonviolent intervention.
Which is?
And that contrasted sharply with the heavily armed and often militarized police forces of that era.
Yeah, it was a bold statement.
It was.
A rejection of the idea that force was the only way to combat crime.
And it resonated with a lot of people, especially those who felt that traditional law enforcement had failed them. The Guardian Angels offered this like alternative, a community-based approach to safety.
And it wasn't just about being unarmed.
Yeah.
It was also who they were recruiting.
Absolutely.
Right? They recruited directly from the communities they patrolled.
Yeah. You had young Black and Latino men, often from the very neighborhoods. They patrolled stepping up to make a difference.
It was a grassroots movement in the truest sense,
It was.
driven by a desire to protect their own communities.
And their training reflected this community-oriented approach.
Okay.
They focused on martial arts, conflict resolution, and de-escalation techniques.
Yeah.
Skills designed to diffuse situations, not escalate them.
It's interesting to consider how their approach might have influenced the conversation about community policing. Even if indirectly, did their methods have any lasting impact on law enforcement strategies?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to draw a direct line of influence.
Right.
However, their presence undoubtedly contributed to the growing awareness of the need for community engagement and alternative approaches to law enforcement.
I mean, they were pioneers in many ways.
Yeah, they challenged the status quo, pushed boundaries, and really sparked a national conversation about the role of citizen action in crime prevention.
But that pioneering spirit also came with its share of challenges.
For sure.
And controversies.
Yeah, we talked about Sliwa's fabrications.
All right.
But there were also deeper criticisms about the organization's structure and methods.
Like what?
Well, one of the most persistent concerns was the lack of oversight and accountability.
Okay.
As a volunteer organization, they operated outside the traditional structures of law enforcement, which made it difficult to regulate their actions or address allegations of misconduct.
So even if the majority of members were well-intentioned,
Right.
there was a potential for abuse, for
Yeah.
individuals to overstep their bounds.
And there were instances where that happened. Yeah, allegations of profiling, harassment, and even violence by some Guardian Angels members
Wow.
further fueled the debate about their legitimacy.
It's a classic dilemma.
It is.
When citizens take on the role of law enforcement,
Right.
even with good intentions,
Mm-hmm.
there's always that risk of blurring the lines,
Yeah.
of exceeding authority.
And that's a tension that the Guardian Angels have grappled with.
Yeah.
Throughout their history, their very existence challenges the traditional boundaries between citizen and state, between community action and official authority.
It makes you wonder,
It does.
where do those boundaries lie?
Yeah.
And who gets to define them?
These are profound questions.
Yeah.
And they're central to understanding the complexities of the Guardian Angel story. Their legacy is a mix of inspiration and caution, a reminder that even the most well-intentioned efforts can have unintended consequences.
And as we move into the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore how those consequences have played out over time, shaping the Guardian Angels' evolution and their place in the ongoing conversation about community safety.
You know, it's amazing to think how much the world has changed since the Guardian Angels first came on the scene.
Right.
And yet here they are, still patrolling, still adapting,
Yeah.
still sparking conversations.
It really speaks to the power of their idea that citizens can and maybe should take an active role in keeping their communities safe.
But it's also a testament to how resilient they are, right?
Absolutely.
They've weathered so many controversies, adapted to all these changes in society, and found ways to stay relevant.
They've definitely had to reinvent themselves over the years.
In what ways?
Well, they've broadened their scope from just street patrols to tackling things like domestic violence, cyberbullying, even disaster relief.
It's almost like they're responding to whatever makes society anxious at the time.
Yeah, like a barometer of our collective fears.
Interesting. And that makes their relationship with the media really fascinating.
Oh, for sure. Because they've always known how to use publicity
Both good and bad.
to their advantage.
Absolutely. Curtis Sliwa especially.
Oh, yeah.
He's a master at working the media, using it to get their message out, recruit new members, and shape how the public sees them.
But that same skill with the media has also gotten them into trouble, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah, plenty of times. Their love of publicity stunts and Sliwa's own admitted lies have definitely hurt their credibility and made people question their motives.
It's that constant back and forth, isn't it? Between wanting to help people and wanting attention.
Yeah, between being altruistic and promoting themselves.
It makes them hard to pin down.
It does. Are they heroes, vigilantes, just attention seekers, or ordinary people trying to make a difference?
It seems like they're a little bit of all of those things,
Right.
depending on who you ask and when you're looking at their history.
And that complexity that you can't put them in a box
Yeah.
is part of what makes their story so interesting. They force us to think about tough questions about what authority really means, where the line is for citizens getting involved, and how good intentions can sometimes lead to bad outcomes.
And nowadays, when people don't trust institutions as much, the fact that the Guardian Angels are still around is even more thought-provoking.
It is. what does it say about us that a group like them, with all their issues, still exists and has a purpose?
Maybe shows that people deeply want to feel safe and secure, that they
Yep.
want someone to step in and deal with the things that make them afraid.
It could also be about people wanting to make a difference themselves.
Yeah.
To not just stand by and watch.
Exactly. The guardian angels, for better or worse, represent that idea that you can stand up and say, I'm not going to just let things happen.
That's powerful.
It is. And it still resonates today, even with all the changes around us.
Their story shows that humans are capable of both good and bad, of having ideals and being practical, of having big dreams and dealing with messy realities.
And their story isn't over.
Nope, they're still evolving, adapting, finding new ways to be noticed.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we have more questions than answers.
We do.
Are the guardian angels a force for good? Have they made our communities safer, or are they a throwback to a time when people were scared and thought solutions were simpler than they are?
The answer is, like, the guardian angels themselves are complicated and have different sides to them.
But one thing's for sure.
What's that?
Their story tells us a lot about how much humans want safety, community, and the ability to control their own lives.
And that's something to think about as we try to make sense of our own complicated world.
Well, there you have it, folks. A deep dive into the guardian angels. It's a story full of ups and downs, contradictions, and moments that really inspire. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below.
And if you liked this deep dive, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more explorations of the fascinating and often unexpected sides of our world.
Thanks for watching VSOW, not a podcast, but a YouTube channel. We'll see you next time.